It's like the first time they fucked. He's going to pull out and jack somewhere else.
He might, that's a fucking like a speeding bullet. You tell me you want him to like, what, shoot her in the chest? It's going to break
like
skin.
she can give him a handy or something first.
Oh, test it. Aim it like at the wall and see what it does.
Can you imagine like that fucking shit going off inside the Fortress of Solitude?
Pew, pew, pew. Like
just
ricocheting
crumbles
off
like
the
a
walls.
chandelier.
Yeah, it hits the crystal like console.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what would happen. We are recording.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me is my co-host, Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you like to see all the movies we have covered, we'll cover one to choose one for yourself. Please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. Review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you would like to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, and our YouTube channel where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are you reviewing tonight?
Gene, tonight's film is long overdue, taking us back to the superhero genre for our great listener, Christopher, who wants us to go back to 1980 and review the iconic sequel, Superman 2.
And Christopher has been waiting a while for this one. He requested this film back in March of 2024. And at that time, he wrote in and said, "Hi, all. I just took a look through the catalog and upcoming schedule, and I didn't see 1980's Superman 2 starring the late Christopher Reeve. I would love to commission it and will be totally fine with waiting until spring of 2025 before y'all can get to it. Please let me know. Cheers, Chris Lloyd." So, Chris, a lot has happened from March 2024 until now. It seems like forever ago. And I'm so glad that we could finally fulfill this film for you. Thank you for your patience, and I hope we can do it justice.
Yeah, and Gene, this was one of those that when it came in, I was excited from the moment. So to get here and to finally review this for Chris, I'm very excited.
Well, Superman 2 is a 1980 superhero film written by Mario Puzo and David and Leslie Newman. It is the second installment in the Superman film series and a sequel to 1978's Superman. A direct continuation of the first Superman, Christopher Reeve reprises his role as Superman, and the returning cast includes Gene Hackman, Terrence Stamp, Ned Beatty, Sarah Douglas, Margot Kidder, Mark McClure, and Jack O'Halloran. The film's plot features the arrival of General Zod and his comrades on Earth following their release from the Phantom Zone. Zod seeks revenge for imprisonment and allies with Lex Luthor, while Superman is torn between his duties as Earth's hero and his desire to live amongst humans solely as Clark Kent. In 1977, Superman's producers decided that they would film Superman and its sequel simultaneously, but tensions rose with original director Richard Donner. Filming was stopped with 75% of the second film already completed. Donner was fired as director after the first film was released, and he was replaced by Richard Lester. Several members of the cast and crew declined to return to complete the sequel in the wake of Donner's firing. And in order to be officially credited as the director, Lester reshot most of the film. Superman 2 grossed $216 million worldwide against a production budget of $54 million. And a sequel, Superman 3, was released in June 1983, for which Lester returned as director. There is a director's cut of the film, however, restoring the original version of the film under Donner's supervision, titled Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut. It was released on November 28th, 2006, in various home media formats. So, Big D, I was only a year old when Superman 2 debuted in America, but I must have seen it on VHS or TV several times as a kid, because there are certain scenes in this movie and certain feelings that it brought back that are stuck in my heart, like a level deeper than my head, things that you remember at your core. I don't know if it's the color scheme that they used or the outfits, the simplicity of the picture, but this movie was super digestible for me as a child, and it left some serious lasting memories that I'm excited to get into.
So I know everybody's probably nostalgic about their childhood or the time they grew up in. What a time to be alive,
Right?
Gene. What a time to be a kid. The things that I've seen as a child, I was there for the birth of, we talked about the arcade games and video games and the computer and the internet and cell phones and DVDs, VHS, CDs, amazing things. And to be a kid in the late 70s, yes, I was little, but I was there for Star Wars in 77 in the station wagon. It made science fiction cool again. It made nerds cool. Then the next year, we get Superman. Who would have thought that a superhero film could be a blockbuster? This paved the way for all future superhero franchises, Marvel. You have all of the different DC. Without this film proving it could be a financial and critical success, none of that happens, or it even gets pushed off for longer. And what was different was entire families wanted to see this. You had the romance, you had the action, you had something for everybody. I remember seeing the original in the theaters, and when this came out, we went and saw it again, and everybody got in line. It was a cultural thing. This came out in 78, and it was arguably considered the first superhero blockbuster. I loved it. And whether or not people can fight over which is the better cut, and we'll get into it a little bit later, the end result is still iconic.
Let's hit the trailer.
Superman 2. The adventure continues with the three villains from Krypton. Each one with the same powers as Superman. Each one dedicated to violence against mankind.
Think of it. 3 supervillains. Or 4 if you count him twice.
The adventure continues in Paris with Lois Lane.
I believe this is your floor.
And the romance continues. The adventure continues in Washington. The world is on the brink of destruction.
Superman, can you hear me?
And Metropolis is in ruins.
Superman, help us!
Is there no one on this planet to even challenge me?
Superman!
General, would you care to step outside?
Revenge.
Revenge!
Revenge!
Now we're cooking, huh?
The big one's just as strong as Superman.
If you've only seen the first part, you haven't seen the best part. The adventure continues in Superman 2.
Before the destruction of Krypton, criminals General Zod, Ursa, and Non are sentenced to banishment into the Phantom Zone. Years later, the Phantom Zone is shattered near Earth by the shockwave of a hydrogen bomb thrown from Earth by Superman. The 3 criminals are freed and find themselves with superpowers granted by the yellow light of Earth's sun. After landing on the moon and effortlessly killing a team of astronauts exploring there, they continue toward Earth with plans to conquer the planet.
So, Gene, this film came out roughly 45 years ago, as we just said. I remember where I was. I remember the plot. I remember who went to see it with me from my family. I think it made a big impact. So it's an odd choice. One I did not remember. When the film starts, we get a full movie version of the previously on. Why did they feel the need to have this in a sequel to a gigantic film? We get not only like giving us like some super high level highlights, this is a straight up almost retelling of the original movie with John Williams' theme. It's blasting in the background, and it's a highlight reel. You even see Lois getting buried by the earthquake. It is his greatest hits. He's fighting like some natural disasters. He even starts going spinning around the earth to get it go back in time. Who missed the first movie?
I know when franchises get launched, we always get origin story again. Now, recently, some series have figured it out that like, hey, we get where Batman came from. We fucking get where Superman came from. We don't need to go over this over again. But for decades, right, it was always you did a reboot. You had to tell us where the person came from. This is not that. This is not Superman's origin story. This is Superman 1 highlight reel being played in Superman 2. And Big D, once I recovered from seeing a baby dick, it's just passed off as this weird montage of Superman's life up until this point. It fails as an origin story. It fails to build any momentum. It is wasted time, and we're starting off with a huge mistake.
But I want to talk about the introduction here to Superman 2. We need to talk about Krypton, which is an advanced planet, advanced race, but their justice system, I don't get, and I have to ask you here. So for a second, we see Zod, Ursa, and Nam. They're breaking into some mysterious chamber. They smash a red crystal, and then they choke out some robot. And boom, sirens go off. Suddenly they're floating, and there's these two giant like hula hoops spinning around them. Iconic visuals. You know what I'm talking about. They get sentenced by some big head tribunal. No trial, no testimony, no investigation, no lawyers yelling objection. It's just guilt and banishment immediately to the Phantom Zone. Was this, Gene, a summary of the entire process of the events, or is Krypton's legal process this fast?
I think General Zod's whole thing was like he was staging a coup. And I think this is like the culmination of the coup. Like I broke into the place, like I'm doing the coup, and then he got caught doing it. So it's not like a trap or a legal case, but I had no questions because I was swept up in the utter gayness of the entire situation. Guys, there's like this white disco robot just chilling and doing his thing. They pop in, they got these silky black suits with like PVC trim showing off a bunch of bare chest, kill the robot, then they crack open this like fucking red glitter stick, and suddenly we got the faces of the tribunal, like the cover art from Queen 2. I couldn't pay attention to anything. I was just like, this is so incredibly gay.
It looked like the third robot was a member of Daft Punk. It's wild, and it happened so quick. I thought maybe it was like a setup. Like they caught him and they go out. But whatever, man, justice on Krypton. Maybe I would turn evil and try to go after Jor-El's son. It's off and running in no less than 10 minutes.
Well, the Daily Planet sends journalists Clark Kent and Lois Lane to Niagara Falls, where Lois suspects Clark and Superman are the same person after Clark is absent when Superman saves a child. He went to get hot dogs. When Lois intentionally places herself in the falls, Clark saves her without exposing his true identity. That night, Lois notices Clark isn't burned when he falls into a fireplace, and Clark reveals that he is indeed Superman. He takes her to his Fortress of Solitude and convinces the artificial intelligence version of his mother, Lara, to remove his superpowers so they can be together. Clark and Lois get it on, then leave the fortress and return from the Arctic.
So in a movie about superheroes and he's flying around saving the world, once again, we have to talk about the sex. It's part of it. The romance is a big part of the plot. Clark and Lois. So I have to, again, talk about sex because the second it enters the picture, Gene, it's weird. The story, it takes a turn. Remember, this is a family film. So Lois wants nothing to do with Clark. And Clark is so sweet. He's polite. He's romantic. He's genuine and he is invisible to her. But the instant that she sniffs out that he's Superman, immediately the visuals, she is on her knees in a bathrobe. She's looking up at him. She's dripping and she's like, I love you. She's laser focused on his crotch. There's this long pause. And then he says, we need to talk. And she's like, yeah, where? And he's like, yeah, at my place. I mean, at this point, it's not like full on love, but she is Krypton thirsty. What can't you talk about in this hotel? It's a giant quiet place. It's the honeymoon capital. You're there doing a piece. You gotta go off. And I don't get why. Why all of a sudden there's this change that Clark accepts where Lois is going to pretend like she's not superhero, like cape chasing. Because this moment came quick once the glasses came off. And all of a sudden she's after Clark. Not for who he is, but what he can give her.
Did you say Niagara Falls is the honeymoon capital of the world?
I don't know. Whatever they were doing, like a big expose.
No, just as a rural New Yorker, I didn't know if this was a thing that I wasn't aware of.
No, I think it's known for that. But back in the 80s, possibly, because they were doing an expose on how they were taking advantage of people up there, Gene.
It's important to note that she's after the right guy. Like, Superman is secretly Clark Kent. It's not the other way around. So she's hot for the dude he really is. The disguise that he puts on, Clark Kent, as you said, the sweet, polite, romantic guy, that's not Superman. That part's an act. The real Superman is the one that she's really into. So she's hot for the dude he really is. I think that made it all the more silly for Superman to give up his powers because now he wasn't being himself. Now he's being another guy. He's a fraud when he gives up the powers.
Wait, so you're making the case that Clark Kent is not the real person?
Yes.
You're thinking Superman is who he is.
Correct.
If he didn't have to hide.
Yes.
So then why, when Clark, spoiler alert, gives up his powers, Superman's not there. He is Clark, glasses on, weak, beta, back to being submissive. He's not Superman, the alpha type that she likes.
Because he's lost his powers.
But his personality would still be there.
I mean, I'm not saying Superman's a mean guy, but Superman's got a swagger. Think about when Superman is fighting Zod and Ursa and Non in Manhattan, and like he gets banged around, and he gets a little grin, and he's coming right back at you. You know, that's Superman. That's not Clark Kent. He acts more feeble than he actually is. Like when he whoa falls into the river. Like, come on, that's an act. That's not really him.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's important to know, and I'm not the first one to think of this idea. This is a widely discussed thing among comic book fans, is that's what sets Superman apart, right? So Bruce Wayne, he dresses up as Batman. That's an act. He dresses up as Batman to disguise his identity. Superman, Kal-El, is Superman, Kal-El. He dresses up as Clark Kent to hide his identity. So it's a reversal. Whereas Bruce Wayne is actually Bruce Wayne. He just dresses up as Batman to look different. And that's generally the case with most people. Peter Parker is Peter Parker. He dresses up as Spider-Man. I feel like I'm revealing everybody's identities here. But can we take a moment from being film critics, the professionals that we are, Big D, and appreciate how supernaturally pretty these two are, Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve. She looks like a woman version of Jarvis Cocker. And Christopher Reeve, he is a specimen. He is so goddamn beefy. And I know we've all seen shirtless Henry Cavill, and he's impressive. He's a big guy. But give me a 6'4" Christopher Reeve in his prime with those blue eyes and those hands and those shoulders. Like, he is a perfect man.
Gene, one of the things you'll get to experience as a father of a daughter is what I had to go through watching this film. So I watched this with Emma, and Emma goes, "Ooh, he's handsome." I was like, "Really?" She goes, "Oh, yes, he's very handsome." So then I wanted to show her who Superman was in the most recent iteration. We're going to get a new one here soon, but I thought she would immediately, "Ooh, Henry Cavill." Put him on. She goes, "Oh, I don't like him at all." She goes, "He looks older. He doesn't look as good as the other guy." And I was shocked. So she's agreeing with you there, but we have to disagree here on Margot Kidder. And I don't want to besmirch the woman because she fought the Hollywood system. She took on the stigma of dealing with mental illness. So I'm only going to base on the appearance of the character of Lois. She looked haggard. She did not look nearly as handsome and vigorous as Clark did. Chain smoking. She needs to drink more orange juice because she looked a bit weathered at that point. Earlier in the 70s, I think she was equally stunning. But at this point, I think you're being generous.
I don't know, that upper lip. Just look at it. Those teeth.
No, she sucks. She's awful.
Kissable.
No.
Infinitely kissable.
No, she's an awful person.
Bring her over here.
She's terrible.
Get over here. Zod and his cohorts force the president of the United States to surrender. Clark and Lois arrive at a diner in Alaska where a trucker harasses Lois and beats Clark's ass. On the diner's TV, the president makes a speech and cries out for Superman's help. Clark realizes that he made a terrible mistake, returns to the fortress, and finds the original green crystal that Lois left on the floor. Big D, sometimes I like to pretend that people in 1980 or 1970 or 1960 were super engaged in civics and knew exactly how Congress worked, and they got involved in local level politics, and they read the newspaper. If Superman 2 is any indicator, people in 1980 were just as checked out then as they are now, because Zod goes to the White House, the president kneels, that's it. America's conquered. There is no involvement on the part of Congress. There's no contingent strike by the military on the White House. And maybe I'm just sensitive because of recent events, but the president is just one guy. Like, there's an entire United States government apparatus that would respond to a threat like this. You can't just capture a guy and say it's over.
Dude, and he even says in the press conference that he's speaking for the world, that he's spoken to other world leaders. But yeah, Gene, I really don't know why we didn't at least get the scientists talking about theoretical ways to fight them, or at least somebody really searching for Superman. Have a scene where the military is looking for him. They're putting out like feelers. They're trying to find him. What happened to him? There's a mystery. They come in, they land in the one small city, they devastate it, and it's pretty much done. But based on Washington 2025, Zod would have been up, and Zod could have probably won. And that's not an attack on President Trump. Everyone here is looking for who they're going to latch onto. And Zod, he could run. He's charismatic. He's got funny one-liners. He doesn't take any shit. I think he could have won legitimately.
Yeah, I think wherever you sit on the political spectrum, and I'm not one to both sides thing, I think we can agree that Congress in general, from what we've seen in this current Congress, spineless. Nobody's sticking up for anything. They latch on to wherever the public opinion is, and they just go with it.
No, people would question, hey, why does Superman only show up to save white kids falling off of the falls? Why isn't he around in the Middle East saving other people? They would question why Superman chose to only save certain people. They'd be fucking talking shit. They'd be having congressional investigations into Superman's rate of like saving the privileged or the needy.
I feel so fucking seen right now. Just wait. Just wait. And I know this is a comic book movie, but I had a lot of questions. Things just not adding up. Superman and Lois, he flies her to the Fortress of Solitude. There's no airport there, right? There's no train service. He flies around and gets her flowers, which, by the way, I didn't realize the bird of paradise was that exotic that Superman would have to fly and get. I feel like I can get one at the corner grocery store. He gets her like a bag of groceries. They have a candlelit dinner. They bang. Next day, we see them driving through Alaska to a diner. Where did this car come from? Are there roads to the Fortress of Solitude? Did Superman pack a change of clothes? Is that how he's not wearing his Superman outfit? He's back dressed as Clark Kent. I know these are boring questions, but throwing this mess together, it makes the whole movie feel like they're just winging it. Like this story is just being spun up with no thought.
You see, but I think in the immortal words of Harrison Ford, when he was talking about Mark Hamill noticing some inconsistencies in the plot of Star Wars, he said, this isn't that type of movie, kid. This isn't that type of movie.
But it is that type of movie because just minutes later, we see Clark walking his ass back to the Fortress of Solitude. Now he's got his hands in his pockets. He's shuffling through the snow, freezing his ass off. So this is an arduous trip. We know it took Lex Luthor 2 days to get there by hot air balloon. Where was his car coming from?
You see, but I think this has to do with the different cuts because there were differences in the film. And if you go back and watch the Donner cut, you'll see that the plot plays out slightly differently. I still don't think they can explain away the fact that, Clark, they have a car to get to the diner, but then moments later, the way Lois treats him, it's questionable. In the moment, she went from thirsty, horny for Superman's cape and for his powers. Once he gives it up, it immediately tells you how Lois is. She's not into him anymore. She says, I can't believe he gave it all up for me. And as he's giving it up, you see her in the background, kind of like, don't do this. She's basically waving him off. It's not romantic. She doesn't think this is a good deal. She doesn't want this man. And let's be honest, even if Zod never shows up, right? The world's at peace. Clark stays a normal human. They're getting divorced in a year. It's obvious. He's just a regular guy. He gets bruises. He gets beat up at the diner. He can't fly around the clouds. The honeymoon phase would be fast. It would be over. And, look at the way she treats him. We're talking about the whole, how did he get back up to the Fortress of Solitude? He gets his ass fucking kicked in the diner. Does she ride or die and say, hey, let's go back there together. Let's go figure out a solution. We're going to save the world. What does Lois do? She lets the man walk down a frozen highway alone in street clothes. He's trying to hitchhike for redemption. She doesn't even offer to drive him. Clark stumbles through the snow like a sad hiker. He could have died. He's a human. Imagine if Clark Kent, Superman, froze to death on his way back. What happens to Lois? Does she go back and get her job back and act like it never happened? This is fucked up.
Yeah, I think it's an unintentional metaphor for what happens in lots of relationships. Like, as I was watching this, I was like, no, don't do it. And exactly same reasons as you, Big D. It wasn't because, oh, no, don't do it, the earth will be imperiled. It was, oh, no, don't do it, she's not going to like you. And we see this happen all the time, right? You meet somebody who's mysterious and exciting, and then you bring them home and you learn to live together and you forge bonds, you learn about each other, and then you see their poop streaks in the toilet. And they start to care more about your diabetes than your dick, right? It's like, that's what happens naturally in relationships. I would really question anybody who loved me after only meeting me for a total of 10 minutes, right? Superman pops in, saves the day, pops the fuck out. You don't really know this guy. All you know is he's good at stuff. Real strong, flies.
But that leads me to question, Gene, why did he sacrifice his powers? Why couldn't he continue to have the dual life? One of them, he's having a romance with Lois. Maybe they fly off to the Fortress of Solitude every now and then. And it leads me to the thought that it's not an emotional sacrifice that he gives up his powers, but it is a more physical, that they can't be together, not in a romantic nature, but they can't be together sexually. And I did a little research, Gene, and I'm not the first pervert to question this. Whether or not Superman's super abilities would lead him to be a hazard in the bedroom. And if you go back and you look, it's brought up in other films, and there is some canon here that, could he even have sex with Lois without it turning fatal? And this isn't just locker room talk or science fiction. There's an author, Larry Niven, who actually wrote a whole essay in the 70s called Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex, arguing that Superman's super discharge could shoot through a human woman like a paper towel. That the comic books eventually stepped up and answered it, and they said that Superman has super control over his whole body. But you don't know that. Superman, we have to assume he's a virgin. He came to planet Earth as a baby. He's grown up. We've seen him at times lose control of his powers. Maybe the sacrifice was made so that he could finally lose his virginity and not put Lois in physical danger of his subsonic or supersonic ejaculate. Imagine if he killed Lois. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I think that there's so many other ways to be intimate. Like, that's limiting the scope. Like, what about just jerking him off?
And he could have said that. Listen, Lois, here's the deal. Maybe that's why he brought her back there. He didn't want to do this at Niagara Falls because his ejaculate could shoot through the wall and hit somebody. Maybe he's like, let's go out to the range. Let's go out to a secluded. He could have said, I don't know what's going to happen. Jerk me off and aim me out at the tundra. Aim me out at the snowdrifts. after the first ejaculate, then they would know whether or not they could copulate. It's a different movie.
Yeah.
He probably never has to give up his powers.
I think the lesson here is don't listen to your AI mom. What does she know?
Right. And also don't give fucking these covert, subtle messages. Tell him. Do not, if a woman comes and says, give up your powers so you can be together, say no, Clark. Just say no.
Well, Lex Luthor escapes from prison and infiltrates the Fortress of Solitude, where he learns of Superman's connection to Jor-El and General Zod. He informs Zod and offers to lead him to Superman in exchange for control of Australia. Again, another Australia connection. The three Kryptonians go to the Daily Planet, where Superman arrives after restoring his powers, and Zod realizes that Superman's weakness is that he cares for humans. Superman realizes the only way to stop Zod and the others is to lure them to the Fortress of Solitude. He tricks the Kryptonians into placing him in the crystal chamber, exposing the trio to red sunlight while he is protected from it. The weakened villains are quickly defeated, and Superman flies back to civilization, returning Lois home and leaving Lex Luthor stranded in the fortress.
So now I know you have to have a little suspension of disbelief with these types of movie. But Gene, did you feel like there was like a lot of convenient things that happen?
Lex Luthor gets picked up out of prison with the worst prison security, by the way. It's a fucking hot air balloon. He climbs up a ladder, gets in there, and then floats for 2 days in a hot air balloon to the Fortress of Solitude. Big D, do you know how hot air balloons work?
I actually do, Gene.
Yeah.
I do.
Talk about that?
Yes, you need modern weather reports that tell you the direction of the wind at different altitudes. Mm-hmm. So if a balloon wants to go east, they find out what altitude's wind is blowing east. So without modern weather forecasting and modeling, you can't accurately control a balloon.
Let's say Lex Luthor, yes, criminal mastermind. Maybe he's got the resources to make a super balloon or something like that. This is not that balloon. This is like a snidely whiplash-ass balloon.
You're also flying it over the Arctic at like 20,000 feet. You're going to die. And there's a lot of hand-waving that we have to tolerate. And it continues because there's some like mysterious alpha waves that he's able to track with a black box. I don't know, whatever. It's ridiculous, but we'll let it go. They then land at the Fortress of Solitude. He's able to find it when the world's military could not. He starts casually playing with the crystals, and he somehow stumbles upon the one crystal that has the full backstory. Phantom Zone, the villains. Oh, there's also one it's a poem about a tree, Gene. He gets that one and the other one, which is the full background on the Kryptonian criminals. And of course, it also explains how he can free them from the Phantom Zone. Mom thought it was important to give the specifics that you could blow it up or break the Phantom Zone with a nuclear explosion, which conveniently that could happen, and that does happen. Why would you put him in this interstellar glass prison where they could be freed by a detonation of a hydrogen bomb? Wouldn't you want to just keep them maybe on Krypton? There's a lot of questions here, but the writing, Gene, it seems lazy. I'm not being too nitpicky, am I?
No, Krypton was destroyed. So by putting them in the Phantom Zone and then blasting their asses out to space, you actually saved their lives because all the other Kryptonians died. Like Kal-El was the last one. This prison can be broken by a nuclear explosion. Guess what's going on in outer space all the time? All the time. Space is basically powered by nuclear energy. Huge forces at play. I think it'd be like a year before this thing got cracked wide open.
Dude, ironically, I went down the science rabbit hole. Do you know that a hydrogen bomb can explode in space? It doesn't need oxygen?
Of course.
Oh, forgive me then, Jim.
Well, I mean, it has fuel and it has a triggering mechanism. What would it need?
Well, they'd get no shockwave. I thought maybe they needed at least a little bit of oxygen to cause, but the nuclear reaction does not. So that would have worked. Would have been great. I would have recommended that if they wanted it to truly be a deterrent, don't have a coup of the Kryptonian government, hang them up on a wall, have them in the public where people could see them. That would be a good deterrent. But the movies, we keep saying, are these plot holes? Are these examples of lazy writing? Or is it an example of the difference between the two films? And we talk about the Donner cut or the Lester cut, and the movie does feel disjointed, even without knowing the history. I think you can feel it's kind of bipolar, that there's this whole behind the scenes fight and the tone was different, and that it was, the original version was supposed to be much darker and they had to reshoot a lot of scenes. And there's a lot of goofy stuff that's added in. You get when Zod and his henchmen are blowing down the street, you get a woman's wig flying off, a girl or in like roller skates being pushed down the street. It's a lot of comedy. It's a lot of fun and games. But Gene, do you know in the original cut, when Lois has a hint that Clark is Superman, do you know how she flushes out the truth?
She shoots him.
She fucking pulls a gun on Clark Kent. Yes. She pulls a gun in the Niagara Falls hotel room. Point blank shoots him. He survives it. Then he reveals that he's Superman. Then we get the double reveal that she was firing blanks. But she smuggled a gun to Niagara Falls to shoot at Clark. That movie was a lot more dark than we got.
If you and I were hanging out in our love nest at a motel and you tripped over the bearskin rug and you fell and your hand went into a fireplace and then you came out and your hand wasn't burned, I go, wow, shit, that was close. I wouldn't say, are you a Kryptonian? Are you Superman? Like, that's a leap, dude.
It's a big leap. Yeah, you're not going to pull out a gun and fucking shoot me in the chest.
No.
Thankfully.
I have not seen the Donner cut. I grew up with the theatrical version. But this explanation, it clarifies some of my biggest issues with the movie. So I'm glad you brought it up. I want to dive into the blowing scene that you talked about. There is no joke, dear listener. An entire leg of this movie, it seems to go on for a while, where they're dedicated to showing what strong winds would do to people in Manhattan. You mentioned roller skating guy. Okay, there's a guy who's roller skating. Whoa, 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 whoa. And he's going backward. There are cars being blown around. There's water spraying from hydrants. There is a guy walking out of a KFC and he's like, whoa, my fries, woo. And then a cashier follows him out too. She's like, your change. Whoa, it's got me too. You got 3 Kryptonians. They're blowing wind. And then people are being blown around by the wind. That is the story. That's the joke. That's the whole scene.
Gene, you forgot about the woman who loses her wig.
Oh, the woman who loses her wig. Yeah, because that's funny. That's another thing that would happen in strong winds.
And Gene, you talk about KFC. There's a lot of weird product placement. I don't want my brand and product to be placed in the middle of destruction.
Yeah.
There's so much. The Marlboro truck, the Coca-Cola sign. It's as if you're paying to get your brand destroyed on film.
In their defense, it is Times Square.
Okay.
I think the boys sort of address this, but I'm always amazed that superheroes fight in major cities when most of the time it can be avoided. The Transformers, they pull this shit too. It's always like, oh, major city, that's where we're going to take on the fucking Decepticons. Here in Superman 2, we have Superman taking on 3 Kryptonians. They are chasing his ass. They're trying to get him. They've already conquered America. They conquered the world. They don't care about any of that shit. They want Superman. They want the son of Jor-El. They're chasing him. He doesn't go to upstate New York. He doesn't fly out over the Atlantic Ocean. Nope. This fight's going to happen in Midtown Manhattan. 28,000 people per square mile. That's where I want to have my knockdown, drag out fight with 3 people from my home planet.
And thankfully, they address this in the later film, the Henry Cavill version, and where Batman, they actually destroy one of the Wayne building and kills however many thousands of employees. Yes, you don't have this fight in the middle of the city. You lure them out, Gene. But yes, as a superhero, if you're going to fight someone, you want to fight on the most advantageous place you can fight. Spider-Man. Don't fight Spider-Man in the middle of a city with giant buildings. Fight him out in the Midwest. What the fuck is Spider-Man going to do in the Midwest?
Well,
Run
okay.
after you? He can't, no trees.
For argument's sake here, even without the ability to web sling from building to building, Spider-Man does have spidey sense. He has incredible strength, speed, and reflexes, and he can still shoot you with the web shooters. He's not as advantaged, but he's still pretty OP.
You telling me you think he's a capable fighter in the middle of an open field?
I think he could take these 3 Jokers.
No fucking chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is no chance. They would rip him apart like a piñata.
I don't think you understand how piñatas work.
Yeah, they'd crack him open.
Oh, okay.
They'd crack him open like a piñata.
You're not invited to my quinceañera. At the Daily Planet the following day, Clark kisses Lois, using his abilities to wipe her mind of the knowledge of the past few days. Later, he returns to the diner and gets even with Rocky the trucker. Superman restores the damage done by Zod, replacing the American flag and dome atop the White House, and tells the president he will not abandon his duty again. Big D, we've already talked about several things in this film that are problematic. The way things ended between Superman and Lois took even me by surprise. He wipes this woman's memory because she's sad. She says, I'm sad. It's killing me that we can't be together. And his solution is, I am going to wipe your memory without your consent. And Big D, you talked about like different ways we could go about solving their problems. Have they considered quitting their jobs? Move to another country? Move to the Fortress of Solitude? You're Superman. Like, you don't have a job. She's Lois Lane, and yes, she is career driven, but if she decides this is more important, she could just not work at the Daily Planet anymore. Instead, he robs her of her memories like it's an act of mercy. Meanwhile, Superman, he's not losing his memories. He has to pine after day. It's like a one-sided eternal sunshine. This whole situation is fucked up.
Yeah, and that's the difference between the two cuts. Donner, he's stuck with the comic book canon. Lester does that weird ass, like you said, the memory erasing kiss. But what about that cellophane, like S shield he can throw? Like he throws and wraps up. Yeah, come on. It's stupid.
What is that?
It's terrible, is what it is.
But I mean, like, what did it actually do? Because he falls down and gets right back up.
I think against a normal human, you might be able to like web, like you'd be able to subdue or like, you know, apprehend someone. But it's something that looks ridiculous. And that memory kiss thing, I have to believe he's used it before. You know, this Superman would use that power and make lots of people forget. He's probably had other romantic episodes with people that he's made forget. Also, why the whole charade? Just if you can make people forget with the kiss,
yeah,
just live your life, dude. But this Superman in the end is less super and he's fucking more petty. He's saved the world. He's got his powers back. He's defeated Zod. He's restored order. What does he do next? He decides to go back, put on his flannel costume, and go up to that roadside diner just to humiliate one sad, lonely trucker who embarrassed him. This is beneath him. This isn't justice. This is petty, and it's beneath him. He crashes the guy into the jukebox. He smirks. He then throws cash at the diner owner for the damage. This isn't something Superman would do. This is like a high school bully beating up the guy to get revenge. It's beneath him, Gene. Do you think this is something that a superhero would do?
No, this is my problem with this version of Superman. The King Bee described him as Mormon Dad, right? Like Mormon Dad, he's doing all right for himself. He's a big, strong guy. He wants to do the right thing. He's got Mormon strength, right? But he sees the world and it's different than his ideals. And his view of justice is just so limited in scope. So let's think about the world that Superman lives in 1980. Okay. The big problems going on in the world. You got the Cold War. Dude, the Soviets have fucking intercontinental ballistic missiles. Maybe go take those away. Maybe take all of them away and throw them into the fucking sun, right? There's the Iranian oil crisis, okay, going on. You've got Soviets invading Afghanistan, an atrocity, right? Water scarcity. across large swaths of the planet, acid rain, deforestation, global poverty. Superman is working 8 hours a day, I'm assuming, as a reporter. Those are hours you will never get back. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Well, he's saving fucking kids in Niagara Falls as their parents are not paying attention. He's saving the people who don't need to be saved. And I think a lot of people would be questioning. I think it's a very good point. But Gene, before we get out of here, I just have to ask, because we're a journalism major. You've worked in a newsroom. I need some questions answered here about the press and how it works. And I didn't get a chance to just come across them organically.
Sure.
So, Lois shows up at the Eiffel Tower with the bomb, the hydrogen bomb at the beginning. She flashes a giant laminated card that just says press in bold letters. She gets in. Did you have one of these, Gene? And could this get me into any press conference?
Press credentials are effective if they're backed by a publication. So the reputation of the publication is what you're riding on. So yes, if I use my press credentials from papers that I worked at, the Appeal Democrat in California, the Chicago Sun-Times, Daily Southtown, I could use those press credentials to get onto a crime scene pretty well, as long as it was safe. A press conference, almost certainly. I don't know if the site of a hydrogen bomb terrorist activity in France, maybe the French are a little bit different, probably not in the States. But yeah, the press credential was always a surprisingly effective thing. What was really incredible is I lived in two areas as a journalist. One of them had floods frequently and the other ones had tornadoes frequently. And when they would evacuate town, the only people that were allowed to stay was emergency, like first responders and the press. So I could just go down the street. Cops might stop me. I'd flash my press badge. You're fine. Go ahead. So this did work. I don't know if it still works in 2025, but as of 2012, yeah, this was a thing.
Okay, last thing here. We got to talk about Perry. Perry seems happy with whatever the outcome is. He's laying out the cover and it's Paris destroyed, Paris saved.
Yep.
He doesn't seem to care. He just wants the story. And he has an odd photo on the wall. Did you see that menacing photo of Bill Cosby hanging on his wall?
I did not notice that.
There is a photo of Bill Cosby looking threatening. He looks dangerous. And this is well before we knew what Bill Cosby had been up to. And it's there straight centered. And I was just questioning, are a lot of the people who are in charge of these newsrooms, are they the unsavory type, Gene, who kind of prayed for bad things to happen because they could sell papers?
I don't think so. I think that reporters often are, and photojournalists, more importantly, are excited about getting the shot, but they feel the gravity of the situation as well. It seems weird and counterintuitive, but a person can be both things at the same time, where you think it's an unfortunate event, but you also are glad you were able to capture it. And there were many times when the photojournalists would come back from a scene and they would show us the photo spread. So for people who don't know what a copy editor does and what a page designer does, that's what I did. I was the copy chief and then the news editor. And essentially what you do is they come back with the story, they come back with the pictures. You decide what can run, which photos are going to be laid out in the paper, which ones are okay and which ones aren't. And sometimes there was some debate because it would be inappropriate. And as you can imagine, there's tension there, right? Because you're on deadline and you got a photojournalist who's got a great shot, captivating shot. There's a lot of emotion in it. There's a lot of information in it, which are the two things you're looking for in the shot: emotion and information. And you look at it and you think, this is in poor taste. If this were my family, would I want this photo out in the paper? And at the same time, is it in the public's interest to see what is going on here? And that's a judgment call that you have to make. So we're never rooting for something bad to happen, but at the same time,
it just appears that way.
An incredible shot, yeah. But to varying degrees, right? There are personalities. Like one thing I'm learning, Big D, and I think you know this better than I do, as I'm approaching 45 years old here, everything that we make of the world, processes, systems, professions, it always comes down to people. Like there are people in all these roles, and journalism's like that. I met some real shitbags who just wanted, if it bleeds, it leads kind of guys. And you also meet people who are very decent human beings. And I don't think anybody's rooting for it. But this guy was the first time I had seen my job, I think, on a movie screen, which was kind of cool because that was I would make the call. We're running the headline, this many lines, this font, this point font, that's the photo we're using, and I'm laying it out. Now, of course, I was doing it on a computer, but still, it was wild to be like, oh shit, there's me. That's me. And as you can see, that job, not, sorry. And as you can see now, I do podcasts and marketing. So that job's not really a thing anymore.
And you figure also Clark might have known the hotspots around the world you mentioned that needed his attention.
Yeah.
He was in the perfect spot, and instead he just turns off his phone and disappears for weeks at a time.
If I could sit down with Superman, I would have the same conversation I have with my mother. I would say, listen, you got a great life ahead of you. You're a very special person. You're a superhero to me. You don't need to have a day job. You should retire and just focus on what you do best.
Exactly.
All right, now's the time of the podcast where we give our Shat score for Superman 2. Our Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get out of respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It's when your mom is dead, but you can still talk to her anytime. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie. It's green screen technology in 1980. Big D, please do the honors and go first with your wipe score.
As memorable as this film is, I can't go too high. I think 2.75 wipes. Yeah, I have to be honest. Superman 2, it's a Frankenstein mashup of 2 different directors, 2 different tones. And I think it mainly works because of Zod. Terrence Stamp, he gives an iconic performance. It's equal, like parts regal and menacing and insanity and weirdly hilarious. The way he plays Zod, this space tyrant who's seems like he's coming out of a Shakespearean play, and he discovers how boring world domination can be. The quotes alone, Gene, the kneel before Zod, or the who is this imbecile? Where is he? His lines are so fucking good that for me, it overcomes the superpowered wind blowing down the streets and the questionable relationship stuff. I think 2.75 is fair.
I did like the part where he sussed out that wasn't the real president. That was cool. This watch has ruined all the love I had for Superman 2. You ruined my childhood. Gene Hackman, Christopher Reeve, perfect. Terrence Stamp, excellent. Everything else in this movie is trash. I think you're right. It's the Frankenstein nature of the film because I like the original Superman. I really like Superman 3. This is an abomination in between. I have to come in at 4 wipes.
And we didn't do enough talking about Gene Hackman. There's a line he has that I thought was poetic and really made me sad. When we first meet him in prison, he said something to the effect of, this is the sad way. Is this how the greatest criminal will go out? And I thought about how sad Gene Hackman at the end went out. I felt for the man. He deserved better.
Well, Big D, with 4 wipes from me and 2 3/4 wipes from you, that gives us an average wipe score of 3.375 wipes for Superman 2.
So, Gene, with a score of 3.375 wipes, that now ties us in the 310 spot. With Highlander 2, The Quickening, another movie with a disaster behind the scenes. Young Guns 2. It's slightly better than Weird Science, slightly worse than Hook and Rudy.
Terrence Stamp in Young Guns, the original. Look at that. We have seen way too many movies. The fact that we make those connections is disgusting.
Totally.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, I hope we did Superman 2 justice, and thank you so much for your commission. And before we close up, we have another voicemail from our friend, Chris in Georgia.
Hey there, Gene and Big D. This is Chris from Georgia calling in. I was calling for a couple different reasons. I just got done with the Matrix Reloaded episode, and my memories of this, I'm same age as Gene, by the way, so to give a point of reference, I remember walking out of the theater utterly confused by this film, mainly just because of the long, drawn-out like monologue at the end and everything, and I got done, and I'm just like, I don't have a clue what's going on, and I don't know what to feel or think or anything else. I was just utterly confused. Anyway, I hated that movie. And hated the third one even more. But I was mainly calling because after the episodes on Star Wars, by the way, thank you, Jeremiah, for commissioning that. After getting done with those, I decided it was time to try Star Wars again with my oldest son. I had tried when he's now 10, almost 11. I had tried when he was like 6 or 7 or something. And lasted like 15 minutes. Now, I know it doesn't help the fact that I've always hated Star Wars. Always. Hate sci-fi. I've always hated sci-fi. I don't have a connection to it. It just doesn't resonate with me. And that's fine. It's each their own. But I decided to try it again with my son, just because I thought maybe it's kind of up his alley. Anyway, I am happy to report. Oh, and let me clarify. So with my son, I said, hey, let's start with episode 4 and go in like not chronological order, but like real life release order. And he said, absolutely not. And he said, it's episode 1, so we're starting with episode 1. Now, I knew going in that obviously the reveal of Darth Vader and all that would kind of get screwed up because of it, because you don't have that surprise. Well, I'm happy to report by watching them in order, episode 1 on, he still got the surprise. The surprise for him happened in episode 3 when the Sith Lord then names him Darth Vader. My son had just as much of a surprise, oh my God, reaction as he would have had later on, which I thought was pretty awesome. So anyway, I'm actually enjoying them this time around. And I think in part because I'm older, so I understand it a little bit better, but also just kind of enjoying it with him. And that's thanks to you guys. So I just wanted to reach out and say thank you to Jeremiah, Big D, and Gene for this. So anyway, hope you guys are having a great day. And yeah, keep up the great work. Bye.
Dude, that seems like it would be a better shock and reveal, because we get the like, I'm your father. It's like, oh, it's iconic. We get that. But like, imagine you're watching this, like there's this kid, Anakin. He's a cool kid. He's very talented. Oh my gosh, he might be a Jedi. Oh, you see him kind of taking a wrong turn, blah, blah. And then boom, 3 movies in, you're like, oh, fuck, that's Darth Vader. And you had no idea? Oh man, I'm jealous of that kid.
See, but the issue Emma had, because we went New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. When I tried to take her back to the prequels, she couldn't tolerate the CGI. She said it looks fake, it looks worse than the original. So she chose to go forward into Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker. And even there, she was horrified. When Han Solo and Chewie come on the Millennium Falcon, she goes, what happened to him? And I said, 40 years happened to him. I said, Emma, don't judge the man. Harrison Ford still looks good. So I don't know. It's interesting. I would be curious to hear if his son had an issue with the different special effects and the production value.
Another thing that surprised me was how many people reached out and said that they were surprised that we didn't talk more about how much the architect sucked in The Matrix Reloaded.
So dumb.
Several people independently were like, we thought you guys were going to go on and on about what a piece of shit scene that was and what a dickhead and how long that speech was. I didn't have that much of a problem with it.
No, but I think there was multiple characters we could have done. That was babble. That it was all just nonsensical, like logic loops. He was just the worst of the bunch, but at that point, we were so beaten down by it that we just tolerated it. The fucking Keymaster, or whatever his name was, running around, with those multiple key rings. He's in a simulation. You don't need that. You could have had a thumb drive, or his finger could have, it was stupid.
Yeah. Also, again, very Harry Potter of them to make him Asian.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris, for the voicemail. If you'd like to leave us voicemail, just go to chatpod.com, use the SpeakPipe feature on any device. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, years after he goes missing in the jungles of Africa, anthropologist Ethan Powell resurfaces when he discovers that he has murdered 2 poachers who were killing the gorillas he was studying. After spending an extended time living with the primates and without any human contact, Powell seems to be unhinged. And a psychiatrist is called in to try to get through to the withdrawn and angry man who may be wiser and saner than he appears. Commissioned by Austin D. Came out in 1999. I'm not quite sure. I think I'm mixing this film up in my head with a couple. But I suspect already that, he might be just playing Gene, that he he knew what he was doing.
Any opportunity to see Anthony Hopkins and Cuba Gooding Jr. in a film together, I'm game. I've not seen this one. I'm interested. I would like something of like substance, a meaty film to dig into. We haven't done one in a while. I go with some Anthony Hopkins.
Agreed. Our old Westworld friend.
Well, thank you, Austin, for commissioning our upcoming film. Thank you, Chris, for commissioning Superman 2. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, host@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or by commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all our information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Noted anthropologist Ethan Powell was reported missing in October 1994. Lost for nearly 2 years. They said he walked among them, part of the animal group. He killed 2 Rwandan park rangers with a wooden club.
He lives with the animals. Takes on their behavior. Becomes one. How does that happen?
These sessions can be your opportunity. Your father may be very ill.
Really? I thought maybe he was just in a bad mood.
Powell is a dangerous psychotic.
What are you up to? Therapy?
Are you a murderer?
Oh, yes.
Why does this all end in murder?
There were many murders.
He was teaching me.
It's like a pretty tough class.
Congratulations.
She still wants her father. What do you say to her?
Goodbye. Never had control. You only thought you had it. You're no mystery to me, boy. I used to be you. I don't believe I can come back to this world the way I am.
What's it all worth? What's it all worth even if you don't come back? Are you afraid to go back there?
You afraid to follow?
Try me.